and talks about various things, from everything from God's love and grace to God's mercy. We're going to hit on God's forgiveness again. I know that was last quarter, and David did a wonderful job using Dan Winkler's material on forgiveness. But there are a lot of things that will help us to encourage others back to God. And we may find ourselves at a time where we're struggling to be faithful, and this may help us stay on track ourselves. Part 2 of the study then switches gears and having come back to the Lord. And so for those of you that don't know this story, if you haven't heard of it, Muscle and a Shovel is basically a book written about one man's journey to the Lord. And he went to all different religious groups, and he tried to study all different things. And basically he had a co-worker at his work that was constantly leaving him scriptures and leaving him questions, and he was having conversations, and he would go here and there and yonder, and basically he found his way to the truth, and he obeyed the truth, and he became faithful in the Lord's church. And then after some time, and I don't remember the timing, but after some time he began to fall away. And that's what this book is about. This book is about his falling away. And when I say he fell away, he was gone. I mean, he checked out, okay? And thankfully, he came back. And so he writes about, in this book, the second book, he writes about his drifting away, ultimately finding himself completely unfaithful to the Lord, and then his journey back. And so it is all about one man's life in the beginning of this book. But at the end of this book, it's more generic to the populace of the church and how to help the church, because this guy's a gospel preacher, and he's very adamant about helping people, especially those who are not members of the church, but those who are also unfaithful. And so once people come back to God, how is it that we can keep ourselves from never falling away again? And it might be that in this part 2, you and I are thinking, how do I keep myself from falling away or falling away further? Maybe we take out the word again. How do I maintain faithfulness? And really what that is a study of what we call the Christian graces from Peter's epistle in the New Testament. And so we'll look at things like godliness and brotherly kindness, and as Peter goes through those there, and he goes chapter by chapter. If you don't have the book, I'm not requiring you to buy it, but if you would like a copy, I'd try to help you get a copy. The best part about it, the chapters are short. And for somebody with ADHD, that's a fun read, okay? Because you can read a chapter in just a couple minutes, and if you need to put it down, you can put it down. But it is a really good book, especially at the end. So at the end of this book, beginning in chapter 37, Mr. Shank explains his methodology. And I'll just give you a snapshot real quick, because I want you to understand that I understand that data can be skewed and numbers can be skewed, and I hate to burst your bubble, but everything you hear on the news is not true. And a lot of times when you hear things on the news, they have done a data set with a skewed population, okay? Meaning that, okay, if we survey 500 people, if they're all from California, guess what? If you survey 500 from Tennessee, it's going to be different than, you see the skewing that I'm talking about. So a lot of times you don't know the data pool from which these numbers are coming, or these statistics. This guy, so I'm going to give them to you. This guy went out and found 400 willing participants, mainly throughout the Midwest, mainly throughout Illinois, Ohio, Kansas, that area, some down toward the south, Missouri, and coming this way a little bit. But he found 400 people that had been faithful in the Lord's church that were no longer faithful. 400 people that would admit that and then would agree to take this survey. And so basically, these numbers come from 400 response. I don't know how many he asked that told him no, but he got 400 to commit to do it. And so the first question he asked him was you raised in the church? That was question number 1. Okay, these people are no longer faithful to the church, but his beginning point was to just kind of assemble some information. So did you grow up in the church? Well, it was only 40% of them that did. It was only 4 out of 10 that grew up in the church, which in my mind is kind of a low number. I think if you drop down into the southeast and you surveyed 400 unfaithful members of the Lord's church, I would think that number would be higher, because I would think that quite a few more had actually been raised. So 6 out of 10 had been converted teenager or young adult years of their lives. They'd been converted from denominationalism or from the world entirely. They didn't grow up in Bible class and Sunday school and like many of us did. And so that may help us some as we move forward with why they're unfaithful. Question number 2, he asked, how long was you faithful? Now, this number bothered me just a little bit. Only 3 to 7 years. Only 3 to 7 years. Now, what we know is that in the Lord's church, we are losing our 18 to 25-year-olds terribly. We're losing them by numbers that are catastrophic. Meaning that if we don't change the course of things, the church is not going to be strong in the next generation based on the populace. And I don't say that proudly, and I sure don't say it arrogantly. I say it very scared for my children and for some of your children and grandchildren. 3 to 7 years. In other words, obey the gospel. You remember the stony ground? Well, this is kind of what it is for me. 3 to 7 years is kind of that stony ground people. In other words, there's emotion there, there's fire there, but it's only there for 3 to 7 years. And if that's all the commitment that a person has, then that's kind of scary. The third question he asked was, well, how long have you been inactive? So how long have you been unfaithful to the Lord? Here he got a wide range of numbers, and so he tried to average them as best he could, and it's still a broad average here of 8 to 15 years. Now, what's scary about that number is they've been unfaithful longer than they were faithful. You see that? And now you want to start talking about the young adults? And when those young adults, meaning 18 to 25-year-olds, leave the church, and we find them down the road somewhere at 45, and they've been inactive for almost 20 years or maybe more, you see the challenge? You see the difficulty? What we're trying to do here is figure out how to bring people back to God. And what I'm trying to tell you is that the longer they are inactive, the more difficult that's going to be. Now, you make whatever conclusions you want to make from these numbers. He don't really make that many conclusions until the end of chapter 37, and we'll look at those as we close this morning. But I'm making some conclusions. I'm trying to figure out, okay, this ain't just a bunch of numbers for me. This is lives, and this is people. This is souls, and this is eternity. And so how do we break or reverse some of these trends or cycles? And I think that's what is so powerful for me in his survey of 400 unfaithful people. I don't know of another study like that that's ever been done. And so that's why it made such an impact on my life, because I've talked to people who are unfaithful to the Lord, and I'm sure you have too. And the reality of it is we don't get around to asking a lot of these questions, do we? And if we do, all we find out is from that one person. And so it may be different for this person or that person or that person. But when you put a data pool of 400 people together and start making some averages and drawing some conclusions, certainly he started seeing some patterns. So what patterns did he start to see? Well, here's some patterns that are very, very alarming. Who made an attempt to help you return? That was question number 4. So we've got just some biographical information about who these people are and where they were raised and how long they were faithful and how long they've been unfaithful. And then really number 4 gets to the meat of this survey. They were given 4 options: minister, elder, deacon, or member. Those were the 4 options given to many of these coming questions. Who made an attempt to help you return? Half of them laughed at the question. It's not good, church. That's not biblical. That's not effective. When 5 out of 10 people that are unfaithful, 200 participants in this survey laughed when asked the question, who made an attempt to help you return? Of the other half, then, 30% just finally answered, nobody. No one. 30% said the preacher. 20% said a member. I'm not here to cast any blame on anybody. I'm thankful for the 30% of people that got contacted by their minister. But shame on the other ministers of the other 70%, right? And if I'm going to talk about my cohorts, I'll talk about other people. You understand what I'm saying? If I read my Bible correctly, you know who's really responsible? And they're not even on the list. And I've got 2 of them in the audience right now, of the 4. And I'm not fussing at elders. I love our elders. I love elders in general of the Lord's church. I respect elders. I'm just telling you, they didn't even make the list. I'm not happy with the percentage of ministers. I'm not happy with anything on this list, to be just quite honest with you. And then I began to ask myself the question, where do we fall? Where do we fall? What efforts have I made? What efforts have you made? We all know people. We've all seen people. We've all watched people drift. What efforts have we made? Number 5 was, of those that were contacted, how many times were you contacted? I don't know the magic number here. I don't know how many times you ought to be contacted. I just know what they said. I don't know what the other 2 said, but 6 out of 10 said 1 time. Contacted once. 20% said twice. Now there's 20% missing there, and so maybe they said a bunch of times. I don't know. He didn't report that. Or maybe they didn't answer the question at all. I don't know. There's some missing links in this data, and I'm just admitting that to you. And he may have just told us what he had reported or what he wanted us to know, maybe. But 60%, 1 time. Let me ask you something. How many people have you invited to church just 1 time and it worked just like that? Well, there are some occasions like that. I'm not denying that. You got somebody out there and you invite them 1 time to church, or you invite them 1 time to a church function or a devotional, or 1 time. You invite them, they come. Well, that's awesome, isn't it? But what do you do all those times when you invite them and they don't come? And the next time you see them, here's what you do. You say to yourself, you know what? I wasted my breath inviting you the last time. I'm not going to invite you again. Now, you don't do that. I know you better than that. You say, you know what? I've invited them once and they didn't come, but that's okay. I'm going to give them a second chance. And so you invite them to something else. Or you say, well, maybe they didn't feel comfortable coming to that, so I'll invite them to this. Maybe they'll, and if that doesn't work, you look for opportunity to invite them again. And all that's great. I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing that. I'm simply saying if we're going to invite non-Christians multiple times, then shouldn't we be inviting the unfaithful back multiple times? I mean, surely one time, well, I told them I need to get back in church, and I told them once, and I'm washing my hands of that. I hope we don't think like that. Now, once is better than none. But I'm not sure that one time is sufficient. I don't know what is sufficient. You'll have to figure that out. But I'm just thinking that once may not be enough. Question number 6 was, have you been treated by brethren since you departed? And to this question they were given the answers strongly negative, the same, positively, or strongly positively. So there was 5 answers to this question. Here were the answers that he reported. 1 out of 10, strongly negative. Well, that person, I don't know who they or who those people were, who that 10% of this populace was, but unfortunately they had a bad run in, right? And shame on the church members who made them feel that way. And maybe they just answered that way because they were just mad they were taking the survey in the first place. I don't know. But this 30% right here is where my eyes landed. 3 out of 10, 30% said negatively. So I'm beginning to ask the question then, why? Why does this person feel treated negatively by brothers and sisters in Christ? Is it because of the way they're acting? Is it because of the foolish choices that they're making and they are making that public? And is it because they're smearing the name of the Lord or the church in some way? And brethren are upset, frustrated, disappointed. And so some of that disappointment spills over into how you treat them and what you say. And I don't know all the answers to this. I'm just trying to lay out some possibilities. 20% said the same. I don't know if anybody said positively or not. He didn't report that. Well, 20% said the same. We're treated the same. I don't have all the answers to know how to treat those people. What I do know is that we've got to share love with them, and I know that we've got to share the truth of the matter with them, and I know that we've got to biblically point out error in their lifestyle. Now, how we do that and how it's received and whether it can be positive in the way it's received, maybe not. I don't know. But I think we ought to be trying, right, to address some things that could be very negative in a very positive way. Question number 7. In one word, tell me why you became unfaithful. One word. Tell me why you became unfaithful. What do you think the one word is? Hypocrisy. 80% hypocrisy. You drop down there to the 20%, unable to make friends or connect. Hey, folks, that happens, right? And we need to do all we can to keep that from happening. I'm not saying this is a caveat or a cop-out, but some people just refuse to be connected, okay? And I think that they bear some of the blame in this, all right? Now, again, this is about getting as many people to heaven as we can get to heaven, and every soul matters. But if you refuse to connect, then it's going to be hard for you to connect, okay? Regardless of how loving and friendly and kind and welcoming the family of God is, you may walk away unconnected or unable to make friends, and some of that may fall on you. Now, the 80% is what I'm concerned about. 6 out of 8 of those went on to clarify things like gossip, mean spirit, fake, negative. One word. Hypocrisy. Can you give me a second reason? Yeah, I'll give you a second reason. 60% gave a second reason. Arrogance. So then he asked, from where? And there you see it. 40% were run off by arrogance from the minister. That saddens me. Makes me sick at my stomach. 2 out of 10 would not, 20% would not call out their minister or an elder, so he just put them both together. So when I look at that, I say, you know what? 6 out of 10 left because their minister was arrogant. I'm not sharing this with you to say you need to get it right. I'm sharing it with you because, let me tell you something, I had a reality check. I got to get it right. Elders got to get it right. You notice nobody said deacon. Nobody. They were given the same options: minister, elder, deacon, member. Nobody said in the answer to arrogance by who? Arrogance by a deacon. Nobody admitted to it was an arrogant deacon that run me off. I think that's kind of interesting, if you want my opinion. But 60% minister and or elder. Hypocrisy, arrogance. 1, 2. So he said, all right, let's see if there's a third reason. He just said a very small percentage even verbalized a third reason. Basically, it's just 1 and 2. Hypocrisy and arrogance. So then the 10th question and final question he asked is, what would bring you back? That's what we want to know, isn't it? I hope so. I hope that's where we're at in this deal. So here's what they said. Friendship. Friendship. That makes sense. Everybody's looking for a friend, right? And if there ought to be any place where you could find a friend, it ought to be the church, huh? So I'm looking for companionship. I'm looking for a meaningful relationship in a friend. We all need a friend, and if anyone's going to be a friend, he must first show himself to be friendly. Proverbs 18. Acceptance. Now, be careful here, because I'm afraid what a lot of people want us to do is accept their sin and their lifestyle. And that's not what this is about. It's not about accepting sin or a particular sinful lifestyle or a particular sinful train of decisions or justifications or rationalizations. But it is about accepting them as a person, as an individual. What have they been through? What are they going through? What struggles? What temptations? Maybe they've got some addictions. Maybe they've got some tough home life stuff and family situations going on. Are we going to be able to accept them and to help them through those things? Are we just going to, when they come in, hey, you don't look like us, you don't act like us, we not going to accept you. And then number 3, a positive environment. Now, you can say whatever you want to say, and there's a lot of things in the Bible that are negative. But ultimately, what people are looking for is well, I don't normally call names, and I'm not going to start today. But there's a big movement going on, even in our county right now. And if you ask anybody who has allegiance to that, they will tell you, I go there because it makes me feel good. It's a feel-good experience. It's a positive environment. I'm not saying we ditch the truth to create a positive environment, which I'm afraid some have. But what I am saying is that somehow we got to figure out how to take the truth and make that very positive and help people feel good about who they are as a child of God. Now, how do we do that? We got to advance love, avoid gossip, and abstain from arrogance. If you need some Bible on that, I got it, okay? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, strength. You want some Bible on that? John 14:15. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. 1 John 2:3, 5:3. Sorry, that's so dark there. You want to talk about avoiding gossip, hypocrisy, fakeness? The Bible's filled with it. Proverbs 16:28, gossip separates friends. 2 Timothy 3, I want to talk about the way of the world. Gossipers, slanderers, verse 3, without self-control. 1 Peter 4 and verse 15, don't suffer being guilty of being in somebody else's business or being a busybody. Hypocrisy. We got to avoid gossip and then abstain from arrogance. People don't like arrogance. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. And we in the church need to figure out what it is. Advance love, avoid gossip, abstain from arrogance. We'll build on those as we move through this first part. I just wanted you to have some of his results and statistics this morning to know what we're basing this study on.